With Season 5 very soon on the horizon, in this video I will go over all of the things you need to know before watching the season so that you have as much prior knowledge as possible going in as you can. I will discuss some lore, spoiler cards, character mentions, and basically mention anything that will be relevant to the 5th season of The Dragon Prince, or just the entire series as a whole, but mainly Season 5. Before we get started, if you end up enjoying this video and want to support me, please leave a like, subscribe, join my fan Discord server, and follow me on Patreon if you want. I'll mention those last two again at the end. This show has lots of content beyond just the series itself, and unfortunately, many people are completely unaware of the mere existence of all of this extra content. Even some fairly popular YouTubers who make content for this show are unaware of just how much content exists out there. I've seen several examples where people without the context of certain tidbits of information get completely confused as to what's happening in the main series itself. For example, lots of people have no idea what caused the rift between Callum and Rayla in Season 4. Lots of people have watched these seasons without this context and just assumed that this stuff doesn't get explained. But the thing is, this stuff does get explained, but just not on screen. I think I'm going to divide this video into 5 major sections. I will go into a little bit of detail about each topic, but I will also leave it up to you to delve deeper into the lore yourself, because diving into the lore is quite fun. We'll look at graphic novels, spoiler cards, short stories, a mention of Tale of Xadia, and other mentions. Let's begin with the graphic novels. So far, there are only a few graphic novels published, and one that will be coming a few days after Season 5 releases, called Puzzle House. Blood Moon Huntress is probably the most relevant part of this entire video in regards to the new season. The Blood Moon Huntress, aka Kim Dael, is this character from the trailer. This graphic novel focuses on a young Rayla and her experience saving a family of Skywing elves from this evil huntress who is going to use their blood to enhance her magic and prolong her life. During the confrontation between Rayla and Kim Dael, we learn exactly why Rayla has a trauma response to water, as she nearly drowns after being launched off a cliff. This novel gives a ton of context on this mysterious huntress, along with why Rayla turned out the way she is today, as it also focuses on her parents' departure for the Dragon Guard, and how Rayla lives with Renan and Athari, eventually convincing them to let her train as an assassin under Renan. Moving on, we have Through the Moon, that completely explains what in the world happened to them between Season 3 and 4. In the novel, Team Zim traveled to the Moon Nexus on Callum's birthday to revive Fifi the Phoenix. Throughout the novel, Rayla struggles with accepting the fact that Viren is dead, and she also struggles with the fact that she doesn't know what happened to her parents or Renan. All of these people that she loved had been taken away from her by Viren, and at the start of the novel, we see her dreaming that he takes Callum from her too. Callum does his best to help her cope, but it also begins to strain their relationship as the two of them differ on their own beliefs. This leads to a massive argument where they literally screamed at each other. Callum ends up feeling bad and helps her rebuild the Nexus portal so that she can perhaps find closure on her family. But while doing this, Rayla discovers that Viren may actually still be alive, or at the very least, may still be at large. This prompts her to want to go after him, a mission of revenge, and also a mission to keep the love of her life, Callum, safe from Viren. Callum of course objected, saying that they would be stronger together, and after a bit of playful debate, Rayla agrees to let him accompany her on her mission, saying that they would leave together next morning. But that night, Rayla wrote a letter to him, kissed him, and snuck out, beginning her 2-year hunt for Viren on her own. In my opinion, Season 4 could have done a much better job at explaining what actually happened here. When Rayla does return, she expects him to welcome her back with open arms, the same way Athari would whenever Renan returned from dangerous missions, but Callum didn't. From his point of view, Rayla lied to him, and she also left for 2 years chasing after a ghost. He was understandably quite angry with her, but one thing that probably saved their relationship was the letter that she left him. But we'll get to that in the short story section of the video. The reason I mentioned this graphic novel, by the way, is because this issue between them still hasn't been resolved. Callum and Rayla are still rebuilding that relationship, but the topic of why she left and why it was wrong has yet to be discussed, and I'm willing to bet that in Season 5, it will be. Now, let's quickly mention one more short story, Puzzle House. This one isn't out yet, but when it does come out, it will give us some insight on a character that will be coming this season, named Kapar. Kapar was Lord Viren's dark magic teacher, or mentor. This is relevant to Season 5, because one of the spoiler cards that we will get to in a moment actually states that he will appear in the 5th season. Another honorable mention that may fall under this category is Callum's spellbook. While not directly relevant to the season itself, it does serve as a decent article of lore. It describes the human kingdoms and their leaders, all of the different elves, and more. Like I said, it's just an honorable mention. Now let's talk about said spoiler cards. During WonderCon, some out-of-context spoiler cards were handed out and shared publicly throughout the community. These directly reference events that will happen in the 5th season, and we will go over some of them now. I don't have all of them, but the ones I do have are Conversations with Kapar, that I just mentioned, Tale of Tidebound Tina, The Bloodline That Binds, Callum plus Cassie equals Book Besties, A Festering Wound, Crimson Orchids, and that one. Going over each of these quickly, Conversations with Kapar is the one I've already mentioned, so it's very likely that we will see Viren's mentor animated and voiced. Tidebound Tina is this old elf we see in the trailer, who is also theorized to be Archmage Kiyu, who we will get to in the final section. The Bloodline That Binds refers to Kim Dael. In the short story, The Queen's Mercy, which we will get to next section, we see that this chain around Kim Dael's neck is actually called a mercy debt. Callum plus Cassie equals Book Besties refers to this screenshot here, where we can see Callum and Cassie researching in the Great Bookery of Luxaria, presumably to find information on Erebos, which we will get to in the Tales of Xadia section. A Festering Wound has many implications. It could describe Raylan, it could describe Janai and Karim, it could also just describe Xadia as a whole. Crimson Orchids refer to this screenshot here, and if you haven't seen these screenshots yet that I keep showing, I highly recommend you go and check out this video where I go and analyze all of them. The last one could mean many things, but it doesn't directly refer to anything in particular yet. I would place money on it being either Claudia or Soren saying it to Viren, but who knows. So, keep these in mind while watching Season 5. Moving on to the short stories, this is where most of the context of certain events in the upcoming season will stem from. You can access all of these for free on the main Dragon Prince site. They constantly post the newest information here, as well as the short stories, and many of these short stories will play a huge role this season. For example, the one called After Darkness. After Darkness is a short story that focuses on Luxaria after Erebos corrupted the Sunforge in Season 3. In it, we see why the Sunfire Elves cannot return to their homeland, as corrupted creatures infected by the Dark Sunforge roam the city streets at night. We see as Karim, the antagonist for the Sunfire plot, loses his childhood friend to this infection, and this also gives context to many scenes we see in the trailer. This corrupted Banther is from Luxaria, and was corrupted by the Sunforge. Just a single scratch from it, and the darkness will spread to you like a virus. Not only does this short story build Karim's character, it literally describes why this thing exists, and given that we are going to Luxaria this season, and have scenes like this, we might see these creatures many times. Another short story that will play a huge role this season is The Queen's Mercy, as I mentioned earlier. This short story focuses on Queen Aditi and Kim Dael. We see how during the time of Aditi, Kim Dael, being the last of her kind, went to Aditi for help. Aditi granted her asylum, but at the price of this thing around her neck known as a mercy debt. This gives Aditi and all her rightful heirs the ability to summon Kim Dael and repay that debt. What this means for Season 5 is that either Karim or Janai could theoretically summon Kim Dael to assist them in their endeavors. Given that we see her literally kill people on screen, this is a pretty good indicator that most likely Karim uses her, and that her role in this season will be far from minor. These short stories all explain something that will occur, or that didn't manage to get explained in the series itself, so I highly recommend reading them beforehand. All of them. And there's actually a 3-part Rayla short story as well that has recently been released, where we see Rayla visit Scumport, which is a likely location to visit in Season 5. I will mention one more as well, from the first volume, called Dear Callum. This is literally the letter that Rayla left Callum before departing on her 2-year hunt for Viren. We see just how much she loves Callum, and she tries her best to tell him to stay strong in her absence. The reason I mentioned this note is because of the same reason I mentioned Through the Moon. This issue still has yet to be resolved, so it's almost certainly going to be nice to have the context of the letter. Rayla spilled her guts to him emotionally in this, but it was her confession of her deepest affection that kept him loving her back. This, in my opinion, is what caused all of the anger in Season 4. We could tell just from his face here when she returns that he was looking into the eyes of someone he loved, but that love clashed with his own self-respect. She left him. What did he owe her? This is what caused the anger, in my opinion. Anyways, sorry for that little rant. We now move on to Tales of Xadia. Tales of Xadia is a Dragon Prince game, and for many people, the handbook is also an immense source for canonical lore, introducing a ton of new characters, stories, locations, images, and of course, context. There are many specific sections in this handbook that we could look at. First of all, starting at page 208, we have a massive section going into detail on the Sunforge, along with a mention of Karim at the end of the tale on page 236. Once again, the corruption of the Sunforge will play a massive role in this season. Along with the mention of Karim, we also have a couple of mentions that directly correlate to some episode titles. Archmage Kiyu is briefly mentioned on page 44. Archmage Kiyu was shown to us in the Tale of Erebos' prison back in Season 4, and she is the Ocean Archmage who physically crafted the prison. Although, this may be an issue because Tales of Xadia mentions that she hasn't been seen in hundreds of years, and info on her was virtually non-existent, so how will they find her? Another one is the Great Bookery of Luxaria. This is mentioned on page 45, and it actually gives us some context as to why they're going there in the first place. Tales of Xadia mentions something called the Scrolls of the First Elves, and Erebos actually falls under the category of the First Elves. We know all information on Erebos vanishes the moment it is revealed, so the information on the First Elves may actually be what they need in order to find out how to kill Erebos, as Rayla asks in the trailer itself. Since these are located within the Great Bookery, it's a safe bet that that's what they're going there for. And lastly, we have a small mention of Domina Profundus as well, the Ocean Archdragon. Domina Profundus was one of the 4 Archdragons who aligned themselves with the Orphan Queen and the Jailer in order to create and hide Erebos' prison. Pages 46 and 53 make a small mention of her, along with a short story called Deep Below, which gives us some information on her backstory. What's also interesting to note is that this is the 3rd season in a row where we get the name of an Archdragon as an episode title. Season 3 had Sol Regum, Season 4 had Rex Igneous, and Season 5 now has Domina Profundus. I wonder if we'll get a Star Archdragon in Season 6. Tales of Xadia is a great way to become completely invested in the lore of the show, but another great way, before we get to the final section, is to join my Discord server, the Cov Club, and joining the official Dragon Prince Discord as well. Both are great ways to learn and stay up to date. Link in the description to both. Also, while we're on the topic of discussing new characters, I think it's also worth it to mention that we know some of the names of the pirates. We know that this man is named Finnegrin from the short story, and from the looks of things, he's likely the captain of the Red Ship. And the guy behind him in this piece of art is called Deadwood. So keep those 2 names in mind as well when you're watching Season 5, as we can see Deadwood's shoulder here, and we can kind of see him a bit here in this shot as well. I do want to make one more mention of something else as well called proto-magic. This doesn't really fit into any category, so I'm just going to say it now. In a Discord Q&A, Araniaz makes mention of a kind of magic that isn't primal or dark, called proto or deep magic. This apparently makes an appearance this season as well, and with the names of the episodes being recently released, I'm looking at you, Infantis Seguine. Now, the last section we should cover is a lot more general. First of all, make sure that you are subscribed to the official Dragon Prince YouTube account so as to not miss any trailers or clips. Next step is to do a quick rewatch of Season 4 so that you can get yourself up to speed with the story before diving into Season 5. Another thing is to familiarize yourself with the episode names. It's always a lot more fun to theorize once you have the most context you have. If you have the means and the time to look at all these things, I promise you, the franchise as a whole will feel a lot more complete and expansive, because it is. It's a great universe. Anyways, that's all from me. If you enjoyed, please leave a like. Comment down below if there is any other info I missed for this video, and please subscribe. Also, if you want to support this channel plus get a bunch of cool rewards, such as your name being displayed at the end of videos and a rank on my Discord server, along with access to some exclusive content like an hour-long video discussing the entire life of Hiccupadic, become a Patreon today. Link in the description. Bye bye!